I think it's about the relationship. And so for me, it goes back to just some basic principles of leadership. But one of the things that he would say often is the most important customer you have is the customer you have. So, what can you do to take care of the customer you have as opposed to always trying to get new ones? So, the most important thing that I can do is take care of the folks that are listening for my voice. And if I take care of the people who are listening for my voice, they're going to tell other people.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the First 100 podcast. This is the podcast where we're going to be exploring the journey of entrepreneurs, business owners, agency leaders, and so many more interesting people as they share with us the strategies, the challenges, and the triumphs that have led them to secure those first 100 customers, first 100 followers, first 100. I'm your host, Daniela, and let's go check this out. Today, I'm joined here with Galen Bingham. He's a very special guest, and we're very excited to have you today, Galen. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I am so excited to be part of this conversation. Can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, well, for starters, why don't you tell a little bit of tell our audience a little bit about yourself, what you do, where your presence in social media is, and for anybody who doesn't know, a little bit about all about you.
Yeah. So I am a recovered and totally reformed corporate executive. I spent 30 years in corporate America trying to become senior vice president of sales for a Fortune 500 company. Funny thing happened on the way to the corner office. I was asked to take on a temporary assignment where I was developing executives throughout the Coca-Cola company for the central third of the United States. That really led me down this path of finding my passion for developing leaders across major corporations. And today I run the Kill Global Coaching and Consulting organization. And then I've got a podcast called Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership, where we help leaders come out from behind their limiting beliefs and step into their bold greatness.
Wow, so it was really just you just kind of like fell into this, right?
Yeah. This was not the design. This was not the plan. I was very specific when I told the universe what I wanted, and God or the universe had different plans. So I'm so glad that what I wanted didn't win out.
That's great though. I mean, I think that's a very inspiring story, especially for people who feel like they're stuck in certain places that of their lives where they don't want to be. And I think I've heard that story in a different way a lot of times where I feel like, those things make me feel hopeful whenever I hear people who get taken in a different path, and this path is just so much better than the one that they had initially either envisioned for themselves or that they were already in, right?
Yeah. I tell my clients all the time, it's important to have a plan. It's important to have a vision. Then at the end of the day, you got to say yes to what's in front of you.
Yeah. I think I remember this story for this one guy who he he graduated from pharmacy, something like that. It was something about working with pharmaceuticals, like medicine, and he ended up working as a video editing producer or something. He was like making commercial videos for companies, and apparently it was just because it was a hobby for him, and someone found him, and it just sort of grew. And it just reminds me a lot of what your story is so far. And I think those stories are just very inspiring, you know?
Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that. I actually got into the space because my pastor of my church, he and I became friends beyond just my being a member of his church. He asked me to come speak to his staff about leadership. This is while I was still in corporate America, still trying to become, VP of sales, senior VP of sales. And I volunteered to come speak to my pastor's staff. That turned into a four-part engagement. I ended up talking to one of his friends who asked me to do this for not only his church, but also for his school, his class, because he was a professor. I did that for his professor, for that professor, for the school. That turned into just this world that I'm into now. And like I said, this was not the design. This was not what I'd planned, but word of mouth just kind of grew into what we have today.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So, I wanted to ask, we found you primarily through LinkedIn. And then from finding you on LinkedIn, we sort of started to find all of your other avenues, right? I found your podcast and everything. Where do you think you found your success the most at first? Was it, you started it through the podcast, or the podcast came after, or was it primarily through your LinkedIn audience? How did it sort of start to pick up and grow?
Yeah, another interesting story, I believe anyway. This was my second podcast. So my first podcast is called the Leadership Toolbox, and I created that while I was still in corporate America. I enjoyed listening to podcasts. It seemed fun. I wanted to see if I could do it, and so I created this podcast called the Leadership Toolbox. It's pretty inspirational, straight line. It's what you would expect to hear from a corporate executive. It basically, it wasn't anything that could get me fired or get me in trouble with my company. And I had maybe 60 episodes and maybe 500 downloads total. And I'm convinced that my mom probably had 300 of those 500 downloads. Uh, but that's what it was. And then I started doing some of this work for a corporate for another company, and the owner of the company asked me to facilitate a discussion around leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I did it, but I was really just giving part of what I could do, because in corporate America, the way that I've been successful in corporate America is by giving a taste of what I could do, but not don't give too much, because I had learned that if I give too much of what I could do, it could be intimidating to some people. So I was doing that for this lady's organization, and she said, Galen, I sense that you're holding something back. I don't know enough about you to tell you what it is, but whatever it is you feel reluctant to give, bring that into this because we could benefit from it. I did that, and she really reacted positively, and she gave me some coaching that I think about it almost every day. She said, Galen, never ever give, never be afraid to give what you can, because you're afraid it might make someone feel intimidated. And from that point on, the leadership toolbox wasn't true enough for me. So I launched a brand new podcast. I like whiskey, I like jazz music, and I like leadership. Not three things that I would talk about in a corporate setting, but that's who I am. And so the podcast was born from there. We talk to leaders literally all over the world about the whiskeys they drink, the music they listen to, and what they think it really takes to be an effective leader. And today we've got almost 40,000 downloads. We stream in 20 different countries. We're being considered for some awards. We've had 100 conversations with 100 different leaders. And yeah, far cry from the leadership toolbox. And I think my audience can tell that I'm having fun, because this is a lot more true than what I was doing before.
Wow, and I think that's very good, like, advice for anybody who is watching, who's trying to grow on any platform, right? Whether it be a podcast or whether it's, some sort of social media like Instagram or something for the younger audiences. I think staying true to yourself is definitely a pattern that I see, especially when we talk to people like you. I think a lot of them say, like, once I was honest to myself and I stopped trying to be something that I wasn't, that's when I really found success.
And that takes courage. That takes courage, right? One of my favorite musicians of all time is Miles Davis, who's a famous jazz trumpeter, 9-time Grammy Award winner. And he says, sometimes you have to play a long time to learn how to play like yourself. Because when we first start trying to do anything, we try to emulate the people that we think are successful. And that's great, except that no matter how good, no matter how much I try, I will never be another version of them. And so it's not until I develop the courage to be the first version and the best version of me that people identify with that authenticity.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think, your first instinct is always going to be to emulate someone else or someone that you admire, or, think about what was good for them and then see if like you can do that. But I think it's finding what you like and what you are good at. That's like where the true success is. And I would also, even if you don't get the views or like the popularity that you're expecting, it's still a lot more honest and raw than if you were to do something that you're not, you know.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. And as I said before, that takes courage because you're being vulnerable. You're sharing yourself with the world as opposed to an imitation of what you think that the world wants.
And I think imitations in general will only get you so far. I think eventually it's hard to imitate someone for too long, right? Or something else, because it's never gonna pan out if you are just copying something mindlessly.
Exactly. Exactly. Totally agree.
Yeah. So, I wanted to also ask you, social media lately has been sort of picking up a lot, in the world of marketing your services and things along those lines. Has that affected you in the way that you have been managing yourself? Obviously, a few years ago, this was not the case. I feel like this is fairly recent for the last few years where, the internet has really just skyrocketed a lot of like people who launch their own businesses and their own marketing journeys with things like leadership, like you said. Is there anything specific that you think you have been affected by in this case?
Yeah, I think it's as you said, technology and the internet in particular has really kind of gone through an evolution. It's always evolving. What worked 2 months ago doesn't work anymore. And when I first launched my business, I think I was still trying to figure out my voice, and so I was trying to be on all platforms. I was on Twitter, I was on Instagram, I think I was on Snapchat, I was on Facebook, I was on LinkedIn. I can't I don't even know what else I was on, but I was wherever there was a feed, I was there. And because I was trying to be so many things to so many people, I didn't have an identity. Today, I'm very clear that my audience is on LinkedIn, and my audience is on Instagram. And so that's where I spend all of my time trying to solidify my presence on those two platforms, and I'm getting pretty close to identifying the voice or the avatar of my ideal client.
Interesting, because LinkedIn and Instagram, I would say, are the 2 hardest platforms to grow on currently. I think, um, TikTok has taken, like, very big popularity, and people on TikTok grow like this, like, 1 viral video is all it takes, and then they're very popular. How have you managed to grow on especially LinkedIn? I think a lot of our listeners have always wanted to grow on LinkedIn, but they sort of will just start making a lot of posts and then they'll just end up in their own followers feeds, so it doesn't really pan out.
Yeah, yeah. I was on TikTok too, right? So I've got a presence there. You go out there, you probably see like, I don't know, 10 videos on TikTok as well. So for me, I'm really trying to resist the temptation to try to find 50,000 um, followers on any one platform or 100,000 followers on any one platform. It's hard to stay consistent with that because I'm a very competitive person. I played sports all of my life, but I'm really just trying to make sure that I've got a clear message, and the people who need to hear my message will find me if they know that they can expect to see me there, as opposed to trying to track down everyone. I'm trying to find my client, the people that will only hear my voice, that are counting on me to help them make decisions.
So you're more of a quality over quantity guy.
Absolutely. Now, I've got quantity out there too, but I'm really trying to stay focused on what's the message that I'm trying to deliver, because there may be, I don't know, 15, 16, there could be 25 executives out there who are running major corporations who are counting on my voice to help them make decisions. I had a client coaching conversation about a month ago with a global technology firm headquartered in the United States, but they're all over the world, and was helping the head of technology work through some things that was on his plate. And by the end of our conversation, he made some progress. He had a lot of clarity. He knew exactly what he needed to do. And I asked him, what was the value of the decision that we just made? And he said, it's going to impact $1 billion worth of revenue for my company. And so I could try to talk to a billion different people and have $1 worth of impact, or I could try to find that one person that really needs what I do and make them and help them make $1 billion decision. So that's where I'm trying to play now.
Yeah, I definitely going for like the bigger picture, you know. I think that's very like honorable and commendable. I think when we see social media now and people who are influencers, they're focusing a lot more on trying to get to as many people as possible, but they're not really focusing on the amount of people that they're actually getting. And that the people that they are getting are actually, actually becoming viewers, fans, enjoying this content, consuming. Because I think for us, we struggle a lot with finding people who perhaps have large audiences, but not very engaged audiences. And as a brand, you value that engagement and that sort of relationship that these people have with their clients, like you just described.
Yeah, I think it's about the relationship, and so for me, it goes back to just some basic principles of leadership. One of my mentors, longtime mentor, I talk about him a lot. Mr. Stan Hutchin passed away 10 years ago, but one of the things that he would say often is the most important customer you have is the customer you have. So what can you do to take care of the customer you have as opposed to always trying to get new ones? So the most important thing that I can do is take care of the folks that are listening for my voice. And if I take care of the people who are listening for my voice, they're going to tell other people. And they're going to tell other people who need to hear my voice rather than my trying to find, 1,000 people, 2,000 people, 100,000 people, just so that I can have that number on my feed. That doesn't really help. That really doesn't help anyone.
And it means nothing if the number is not doing anything, right? Like if it's just that, anybody could write like 10 million.
I think there was a point in time when I don't know if this is happening today, where people would purchase followers. They would purchase
Boo.
100,000 followers just so that they could say, "I've got 100,000 followers." But if it's not real, and you know that it's not real, and most of the people following you suspect that it's not real, then what's the value of what you paid for?
They still purchase, or I've seen like when I'm scouting for influencers, I also see a lot of bots in their comments or bots in their followers or bots just everywhere. And what happens is that, they'll have like a video up for, let's say, 10 minutes, and the video all of a sudden has 700 comments, and they're all just like, great work, love the vid, give us more advice. And, for us, it's very obvious that this is very like, you got some AI tool to just generate these. And it's not valuable for us because we're trying to promote our services. And if we're just promoting it to a bot, what is what are we getting out of it?
Yeah, regardless of the technology, I mean, we talked earlier about how quickly everything changes, and there's always a new platform. Regardless of the platform, it always comes down to a couple of basic business principles for me, and that is find the people who want to know what you have. They want what you have. Number two, add value in a real way as defined by them. And then number three, charge a price that is consistent with the value that you are delivering. As a matter of fact, over deliver against that commitment. And that's how you build your audience.
Yeah, I think pricing is also, I mean, I've also struggled with that because I think we either get people who overprice or who have no clue what they're doing when it comes to pricing. I think that's also a very touchy subject. And very, like, I would say, very easy to sort of spiral or offend people or, not get in the right mindset. But I think whenever I see fair prices, I don't really feel the need to negotiate or, try to change things up because I'm like, okay, you're worth this much.
Exactly. And then again, that keeps coming back to value, right? Spend time focused on how do I create more value, then the price becomes a non-discussion if I'm actually adding value. And most of the times when someone gets your price, the first thing they're going to do is ask to speak to one of your previous clients. to get a an understanding as to how much value you created. So you keep coming back to this same the same proposition of do what you say that you're going to do, over deliver, and take care of the clients that you have.
Yeah, I think for us as well, we try to also give pricing to our customers that is fair to what we are gonna deliver and fair to what we also need in return, right? So, like, that both parties are getting what we need, and I agree, like, if you are giving value, then the price is even if it's high or even if it's, like, a little bit not what a person envisions, it's gonna be worth it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Value comes down to a very simple equation. It's are you getting more than what you paid for?
Yeah, are you
If you're
getting
not, if you're not getting more than what you paid for, then you're not. There's no value exchange. If you pay me $1 and I give you $1's worth of value, then what was the point? You could have kept your dollar. But if you pay me $1 and I give you $5 worth of value, well, then that's a really good investment for you, right? And so it keeps coming back to how are you helping your clients do what they're asking you to do?
So I have a question about your clients. So you have a lot of calls with them, right? Throughout the day. And obviously you're not working sort of in a corporate setting anymore. How are you sort of managing that free form type of job opposed to like a more, you know, composed schedule of like 9 to 5 and then you're done? I think a lot of our sorry, but a lot of our audience and a lot of people who are in this kind of like, more free type of business really struggle with that balance of life versus work.
Yeah, that is a struggle, and it's something that evolves. I'll tell you, when I first came to this side of the corporate line, if you had $50 in a problem, you had a coach. So I had a whole bunch of clients. I was doing a whole bunch of work, but I wasn't making a whole bunch of money, and I didn't feel good about it. It really came down to setting boundaries for yourself. I had to set boundaries for myself and say, these are the hours that I'm going to work. These are the kinds of clients that I'm going to have that I'm going to work with, and then eventually building a team around me that would help me reinforce those boundaries. We use technology a lot. And I've got a team that they understand my vision, they understand my limitations. They know that I have a tendency to really, really want to help people. And even if it doesn't make good economic sense, I will still want to help them. But my team has been very, very good at helping me create products and services that would allow me to help them, although they might not be getting my time. They might not, be able to spend the money to have me in front of them. They still have some self-paced options that will allow them to get some of the things that they need.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's also really important. I think when you don't have sort of when you work in corporate or, when you're working for someone else, they give you the guidelines. They give you the rules and you just follow them. When it's very much on your own, it's really easy to sort of spiral and just mess it all up and then find yourself either not working enough or working too much, right?
Yeah, I mean, just as you described, though, in corporate, someone else is giving you the guidelines, they're giving you the rules. You got to do the exact same thing when you're working for yourself. You got to create the rules. And then you got to hold yourself accountable to living by those rules. And just as if you were to violate those rules in corporate, there has to be some implications to you violating those rules when you're working on your own. Um, uh, the same principles apply, just now you're responsible for creating those principles.
Yeah, I definitely a lot of discipline. Probably why not everyone is made for, having their own businesses. I think some people I when I started working, and I'm pretty young, so I mean, I think my first job, I I remember I was very kind of shocked because I was like fresh out of college and I'm in this like sort of I worked in a very big company. My first job was like a very established company. And they had a lot of, their SOPs very just down to the T. They had the rules and there were people there who had been in the company for like 10, 15 years, and they had never switched their roles, they had never been promoted, what they were doing was pretty much the same, And I remember just being surrounded by so many people that were older than me and who were very comfortable in that office, because it was also my first time in an office. And I just remember seeing people's desks. They were basically living at their desk. They had like mugs and stuff, and it made me feel so surprised because I wasn't used to that. And I think what really struck me was just how comfortable some of these people had gotten and how they had basically spent an entire life working for this company, and they were content with that. And I remember at first I was very critical because I was like, why would you want to like have the same job for 20 years? That's like so depressing, blah blah blah. And then someone, like that was there, they kind of talked some sense into me, and they were like, like some people are not made to be like the boss. Some people enjoy what they have, right? And that's okay. But and if you didn't have people who wanted to be content with that, and if everybody just wanted to like do everything, then you would also have those spaces that needed to be filled. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Then I think I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's truth in the statement that if you can't work for someone else, then you can't work for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because it takes a great degree of discipline in both situations. I think the fact that you had that time where you're working for a big company that gave you an appreciation, I suspect, for what it takes to run a successful business working for yourself.
Yeah.
The principles never change. They just change vocabulary, but the principles are still true.
Yeah, and the boss was very like the CEO, he never, I think from what they explained to me, he never sold stocks. He always just kind of kept it within the family, and he was it was a family-owned business that sort of just skyrocketed. And it was crazy to me to see how much they had actually grown, because they had departments, they had like a whole building, and I was on the second floor. They had like 12 floors of employees. I was like, wow, that's like a lot. And when you sort of start to learn about this and how people have grown, it really changes your perspective, because I think when you're young and you're sort of entering the space, you're not sure about anything, and I think you sort of get swayed by what you see on TV or on social media or on movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot out there that there's a lot in corporate America. There's a lot in a lot of businesses that's just there because it has always been. It's tradition. But when you evaluate, does this really add value to what I'm doing? Then usually people start making different decisions.
Yeah. Well, Kaylin, I think our time is almost up. It's been great having you. Before I let you go, I wanted to give you a space to sort of talk to our followers a little bit about you, tell them about your podcast, about your social media, your Instagram, your LinkedIn. And I would be adding those links to our video so that they can find you easily for all those new people who want to learn more about leadership, more about you. So, space is yours.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much. I really enjoy this conversation and your podcast and the work that you're doing. The best way to get a hold of me, you can find me anywhere. If you put in my name or you search Kill Global Coaching and Consulting, KILN Global Coaching and Consulting, you'll find me on every platform. But the most fun way to get a hold of me is by checking out my podcast, Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. We talk to leaders literally all over the world about the whiskeys they drink, the music they listen to, and what they think it really takes to be an effective leader. We've talked to the former CEO of Anheuser-Busch Company, the current CEO of the Honey Baked Ham Company. We've talked to authors. We've talked to celebrities. We've talked to everybody. And we keep coming back to this very specific question of what does it take to be effective in your space, right? Whether you're leading people or whether you're just a person, you're just an individual contributor trying to get really, really good at doing this thing that you believe that you were put on this planet to do. What advice can they give you to help you get better at that? That's our passion. That's our commitment. And we're having fun. We're having fun. So I double dog dare your listeners to check us out at least once. I guarantee you we're going to give you something that's going to help you take another step in the path that you're supposed to be on.
That's great. Yeah, no, definitely. I will be sending as many people your way as possible. If you have any listeners who would be interested in Penji, obviously, send them our way. It's been great having you, and we will see you guys on the next time.